Welcome to a new edition of the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino. On this episode, we talk with UK-based digital marketer and podcast host Paul Padmore. He's had a 10-year-plus successful career in the digital advertising industry in the UK. Today, he heads up the customer engagement team for a Neuroscience Insightâ consultancy in London. There have been a number of unplanned career bumps along the way that had a traumatic impact on his career progression. In addition to his business work, he hosts a podcast called My Perfect Failure, where he discusses a multitude of subjects from overcoming failure, mindset, behavior change, imposter syndrome, and many other topics. Enjoy this interview. Paul, it's great to meet you. And I mentioned up front, we really went through some trials to get to this point, several times rescheduling, getting the sound to work. So it's great that we've connected and convened. It's wonderful to meet you.
It's a pleasure to be here. And I was super excited to have this conversation, so I'm glad that we persevered.
Absolutely, me as well. So the first thing I want to begin with is, I know that we've all lived through this pandemic and it's worked on us in very specific ways, so I'm curious with you, how did you survive this 3-year period now that the world's waking up, and how has it changed the way that you conduct business and live your life?
Interestingly, I think the pandemic has, although it's been traumatic and it's been a really difficult process, I think it's, for a lot of us, including me, it's taught us to be maybe more resilient, in a number of different ways, because we can't rely on, we can't rely on having access to people, like we did before. Definitely I've been more, I guess, out of necessity rather than maybe the initial need, but there's been that necessity to kind of do things for myself, working remotely, not having access to people, having to troubleshoot more, having to kind of like delve into things that historically I've always had people around me. I've been able to ask people that like IT things, that like financial things, that like technical things. I've had to do all that myself, so I've kind of given myself a pat on the back a few times when I've had to confront something that definitely, it wasn't, isn't historically in my wheelhouse of skill set. So it's been an interesting period.
So let's get into that skill set, and I want to simplify a little bit for everyone to understand exactly what you do. I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of third graders at a career day, and one of them looks up at you and asks, "What do you do for a living?" How do you explain that to that child?
Okay. So I guess I do a couple of things really. So the first thing, so 9 to 5, is that I work with psychologists. So we work with brands, we work with organisations that want to have a better understanding of their consumer. So we use psychology, we use the power of the non-conscious to understand what people's real needs are that actually aren't driven from the conscious way of speaking. So 10% of our decisions are made in the conscious, are made verbally, but 90% of our decisions are made non-consciously. So what we look to do is have those work with brands, organisations that really want to increase, engagement with their customers, loyalty with their customers, trust with their customers. So we can very simply, I'm not a psychologist, but I work with a bunch of really talented guys, and I initially will have those initial discussions with brands, organisations that have challenges. I will get underneath the bonnet of what those challenges are, and then once I realise that we can support, I will bring in I will bring in 1 or 2 people that are trained, that are psychologists, that have got better skill sets than me, and we will just work with that client in order to help them understand how they can achieve some of those things that I spoke about before, essentially understand the motivational needs of their customers, as opposed to, and it's trying to remove the guesswork when it comes to engaging with your customers.
So when you were in the 3rd grade, what was your dream? What did you want to be when you grew up?
Good question. So when I was in the 3rd grade, what did I want to be? Probably, because you can probably hear from my accent, I'm based in the UK. So I'm from a town called Basingstoke, which is just outside, not far from London, about 50 miles from London. So when I grew up, like not every kid, but most young boys, I probably dreamed of being a footballer. Playing football for my say local team, but closest team to me, which had been Southampton. That never quite materialised. But I think after that, when I realised that wasn't going to happen, I think I've always had I love people. I love connecting with people. So I think the idea of helping people, connecting with people, having that relationship with people, and creating a vehicle where I can be a conduit and support people in any way I can. So that definitely was something that I lent into from an early age.
So who's been kind of a role model or a hero for you in your life that's kind of driven you?
Definitely my mum. Definitely my mum. She's definitely a role model for me. So my family are from Barbados, so they came to the UK. Well, my mum, we use her as that example. So she came to the UK in the 60s, and it was segregation and challenging times, and it was a lot more challenging than it is now. And she forged a life for herself against all the odds. She's brought me up. She not just brought me up and other family. She's also helped support family in Barbados. I continually marvel at her ability to do that, and without even questioning it, just doing it. So a real selfless person. So she's my inspiration, definitely.
If you can meet anybody alive on the planet right now, who would it be? Who would you love to spend some time with?
Good question. That's such a good question. Like right now, at this moment, who would I want to spend time with? Okay, I want to give you an accurate answer on that. So, who inspires me? There's lots of people that inspire me today, but I think if I had to choose one particular person to sit down with and have a conversation with, possibly Barack. So as I'm trying to, Barack Obama's coming to mind. He's the person that springs to mind. So yeah, sitting down, having a cup of coffee, cup of tea with Barack Obama, and picking his brains, that would be time well spent.
I'd love to pull a chair up at that table.
Yes. If it ever happens, it's going to be on your side of the pond, so I'll give you a call, let you know what's happening, let you know where you've got to be.
Absolutely. I'll get you there. We'll find a good cup.
Yeah.
What is it that ultimately motivates you every day to get through your day and accomplish what you want to get done?
So, what motivates me? I think it goes back to, I was thinking about this the other day, and I think that being alive is such a privilege, and it's such a honour to be alive. And I think for me, it's squeezing every ounce out of the opportunity that we have to live. And part of that, what that looks like for me, I host a podcast called My Perfect Failure, and it's around the idea that everybody has a unique ability. We all have unique abilities, but we don't all maybe have the confidence or have the awareness that we have these unique abilities. So for me, what motivates me is the opportunity to be part of that conversation where you give people, hopefully, that awareness so people can really lean into who they really are and not maybe do things that, or maybe lead a life that doesn't really give them that fulfillment.
So ultimately, with everything that you've done and accomplished in your life, what are you the proudest of?
So I think I'm. Good question. So I think I think I'm the proudest of kind of like what I said a second ago. I think the podcast, I'm proud of that because similar to you, that you're a wonderful broadcaster, and I think when you're able to put out hopefully great content, I think it really affords you the opportunity to impact people that you will never ever meet, and it's creating wonderful vibrations that travel far beyond the microphone and will outlive everybody that picks up a microphone and creates wonderful content. So I hope that I'm going to leave a legacy of inspiration. So that, I'm proud of that idea.
So, based on the life that you've lived, we all gain wisdom. And let's say you have a dream tonight. You run into a younger version in your 20s of yourself, and you could give that version of you a piece of advice based on the wisdom you've gained in your life. What would you tell your young version?
You know what? I think I definitely would tell my younger version to don't wait. Don't wait for the perfect time. Create the perfect time and don't wait for it. The perfect time doesn't exist. So create, enjoy yourself and create your perfect time because it's there. Don't wait for it.
So, of all of the work and the clients that you've gone through in your life, what's been the best client response, best success story you've had?
Okay. I think the one that springs to, as you asked that question, the one that immediately springs to mind is a client that I worked with before the pandemic, and these guys were a big client for us at the time. And I recall having a meeting, and the client was, essentially I was going there because, go there, catch up and stuff, talk about new opportunities, that type of thing. But also we knew that that account was a competitive one, so there were people that were sniffing around that account because they wanted it because it was quite lucrative. So definitely I was a little bit having a lovely meeting because we got on well, but in the background slightly anxious about where this was going to go. So when we got down to kind of discussing that piece, he kind of said to me, look, we have been talking to other people, and we've decided that actually we prefer working with you and not them, even though it's more, it will be a cheaper exercise to work with them, but actually we love the relationship that we have. So that was a lovely not vindication, perhaps not the right word, but that was a lovely piece of recognition because it meant that I was doing a good job and they valued that, even though the relationship that we had meant that it probably wasn't as lucrative, or it was more costly to them than maybe looking at other relationships. So that was quite nice.
So as someone that does, marketing and advertising and understands this business, what's been your favorite ad campaign or marketing campaign that you've experienced prior to getting into this field, or even at the same time? What's been one of the most impressive campaigns you've ever seen run?
Some campaigns years ago. I'm going back a number of years now. So some of your listeners may not, they might not be old enough to remember these, but Barclaycard. So they used to run campaigns where they were all inspirational campaigns about if you could, it was almost like the question you asked me about, if I could speak to somebody right now, who would it be? And the campaigns were very inspirational, and so they got there were celebrities, people like Samuel L. Jackson, and they could talk about the experience of using Barclaycard, but then they could talk about it in that sense of, if you could have that conversation, if you could have a conversation with somebody that inspired you, who would it be? And people were talking about Martin Luther King, Nelson Mandela, those types of guys. I'm going back probably 20 years, but they were very inspirational to me. And my cousin happened to work on that account, so for an ad agency in London. So I kind of was privy to, the process and, connecting with some of these people like Samuel L. Jackson and how nice they were during those campaigns, and to know the conversation they were having, and then to see the finished article, it kind of meant, it's nice to see that.
So, Paul, everyone out there has a perception of you, an idea of you in different phases and places of your life. Family, friends, clients, contacts, colleagues, but you ultimately are in control. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
I think I'm somebody that's evolving, somebody that wants to evolve, that wants to become more impactful, more useful to people. So my impression of me is someone that is on a mission to evolve and impact, but do it in a way that is, I guess my personality is quite a calm personality that does it maybe not in an aggressive way, but in a thoughtful, considered way. But somebody that is, constantly evolving, but aware of that I'm evolving.
So, Paul, if anyone out there wants to learn more about you, anything involving your world, where is the best place on the web for them to go?
Okay, so you can find me on LinkedIn. So the LinkedIn is Paul Padmore. So you can, I can happy to share a link with you so everybody can find me there. Also, you can find me at myperfectfailure.com. It's very easy. It's only one. So it's www.myperfectfailure.com. And so those are the best places, I would say.
Excellent. Hey, Paul, this has been great. Thank you for opening up. Thank you for taking time out. I'm glad we persevered and we got in here. This has been wonderful.
Joe, thank you so much. I did say beforehand, I'll say it again. I love what you do. Love your talent. Your talent to me is inspiration. I love the way that you're able to create such a lovely environment to open up and to have lovely conversations. So thank you for doing what you do.
Thanks for tuning in to another famous interview with Joe Dimino, where we cover the world of art, literature, business, spirituality, and more from around the globe. If you want to hear more interviews, visit the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino channel on YouTube. Find us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Thanks again for listening, and until next time.